So you want to eventually start your own candle business, and you know how important it is to test your candles before selling them. But how long do you actually need to be testing your candles before you're ready to sell? And the answer is hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica with Memory Box Candle Co. And I make videos all about the journey of starting a candle business. In today's video, I just wanted to answer the question, how long you should be testing your candles before you actually go to sell them, because I experienced selling a little too early because I was so excited to start selling. And I was also really excited because I switched over from a single wick in the jars that I was using over to a double wick. And there was just such a crazy difference between those two and the way that the candles were performing. So as soon as I switched over to double wicking, I found myself just getting so excited and saying, this is it. I found my wicks. It's performing so much better than it did before. And looking back now, I realized that I should have gone through even more of a testing process than I did. And I spent about 6 months total of testing from right when I started making candles up to launching my business. So I do think, looking back, that I should have definitely spent more time testing. So this is going to vary based on your personal experience with testing. I've received comments from people saying that they've been testing for years and they're still trying to look for a really good hot throw or whatever it is. They're wanting everything to be perfect. And I think that in and of itself can be also kind of a setback for a lot of us, is we're thinking that we need to create this absolutely flawless, perfect candle. And I will put up a video right here talking about how my candles are not perfect, but there are a couple things that you need to make sure that you do prior to actually launching your candle business and selling them to the public. Number one is, of course, safety. We want a safe candle. We don't want a candle that is going to overheat, shatter the jar, or cause any excess soot or smoke from the candles. You want to make sure that you are using a jar that's appropriate for candle making. So you don't want to be using anything that's too thin and then over wicking your jar. That could definitely cause your jar to crack or explode. And you see all those videos on TikTok or whatever of these candles just engulfed in flames, which that also could also have to do with adding too much fragrance oil and having the fragrance oil seep to the top of the candle. So there's a lot of knowledge and things that you need to know prior to actually selling your candles to the general public, because everybody that doesn't know how to make candles, they're going to light the candles. However, they're going to light the candles, probably not trim the wicks as much as we want people to trim the wicks. So there's little things that you do need to think about when you are designing and creating your candles. And the more you go through the testing process, the more you're going to learn your materials. So after you've chosen your materials, you really want to go through the process of testing your candle and learning your candle, learning how it performs when you have your wicks trimmed to a certain length, how long you light it for, if there's any hang up of the wax, if it tunnels, if you feel like the jar is getting too hot or the flames are getting crazy. There's all these different things that you want to make sure of when you are actually creating a safe candle. So you want to create a safe candle, but you also want to create a good performing candle. So a candle that has a good cold throw and a hot throw, because that's really what's going to sell your candles and keep people wanting to come back and purchasing more, is the actual packaging of your candle and how it performs. But of course, we want to make sure that we're also putting out a safe candle. So we want to make sure that the wick sizing is appropriate for the kind of jar that you are using. You want to make sure that you are following a formula to where you know how much fragrance oil you're adding in, and not doing the standard formula that a lot of people use, where you end up using too much fragrance oil, which could actually lead to the fragrance oil seeping out to the top of the candle and then causing a fire hazard. I don't say this to scare you. It's really just something that you need to be aware of as a candle manufacturer and a candle seller, to where you're giving that product to somebody else, because it's your responsibility to make sure that that is a safe product before it goes into the hands of somebody else. And there can be kind of a fine line there between a safe safe candle and a good performing candle. There's a very fine line right there, because if you've tested for any amount of time, you know that sometimes if you have a perfectly performing candle, sometimes the hot throw is not there, and that can be very frustrating. The testing process is what it is. It can be very frustrating. It can be challenging. I have tested and changed my formula so many times throughout the year. So don't think that you, once you get your product out there, that you can't go through and change some things, because you never know what could be changing in the manufacturing of your supplies that you're using. So you want to make sure that you keep testing over time. But overall, I think anywhere from 6 to 12 months is probably a pretty typical time that people take to test and learn the materials prior to launching their business. There are some people who choose to kind of accelerate that and do 2 to 3 months and then launch. The only thing I would say about that is if you've already had good experience with learning the craft of candle making, let's say you've been doing it a little bit as a hobby, you've tried out different materials, and you know the process of going through and testing the exact candle that you will be selling, not testing in another jar that's cheaper and then just kind of transferring the ingredients and supplies over to, let's say, a bigger container and then selling that. You have to test in the exact formula and the exact supplies and jar that you're going to be selling in to your end consumer. You have to test in those materials, even if they're on the more expensive side. So if you're wanting to start a luxury line, you have to test with the materials that you are going to be selling to the end consumer with. And again, I say anywhere from 6 to 12 months, maybe 6 to 18 months, depending on how long you're going to be learning and putting time into everything. But if you are somebody who has already been doing candle making as a hobby and you're just kind of switching over to do a testing on your final materials, a few months, I don't see why that is too big of an issue if you're able to identify the things that you're supposed to be looking for in order to create both a safe and good performing product. But I get it. It can be really hard to know how long it should take you, and it really depends on each individual out there. It may take you a shorter time, it may take you a longer time than other people. It depends on how much time you have to put towards testing, how long you have been testing, how many different types of wax, jars, wicks you've gone through. Sometimes that can prolong the process because you kind of feel like you're jumping back and forth. Like if you try one kind of wax and it's not working and then you switch over to another kind of wax, that can prolong everything. So sometimes that can make things, take a little bit longer than they should. But just know that you can always be changing things, even if it's just little slight changes in your formula. It's not concrete the second you launch your business. It just needs to be safe enough to where a general candle consumer will be safe using your product. I'm starting a new little segment in my videos where I highlight a comment from you. So today's candle comment comes from Dana Gray, and this is a question, and it's, how do you know when to double wick a candle jar? This is an excellent question and one that I get very often. And the way that I knew that I needed to double wick my candle jar was that I was not able to find one single wick that was able to give me a good passing candle. So what I found is that if I had my container, which is a diameter of 3.25 inches, which is a really hard size to wick, anywhere from just shy of 3 inches up to close to 3.5 inches can be a very difficult diameter to wick. And what I found is that a single wick, I needed to use pretty much the largest size wick in whatever series I was working with. So I think when I was doing the Eco series, I was doing either a 14 or a 16. And what I found is that eventually the candle would just start sooting or smoking like crazy, and it wouldn't even come to a complete melt. So it was like the largest size in the series, but it wouldn't come to a complete melt, and it just created this really poor performing candle with a crazy flame that would dance like mad, that would dance like crazy. And what I did was, instead of using one single wick in the largest size of the series, I would do 2 wicks in the smallest size of the series. And that's where you need to start. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm using a diameter that's over 3 inches, I kind of want to double wick and see what I can do and see how this is going to perform, do 2 wicks in whatever the smallest wick size in that series that you were working with. We also had to add some beeswax into our blend as well to bring up the overall melt point of the wax so that it can make it a little bit cooler when it's burning as well, so that it wouldn't get too hot, because you do have to be aware of it burning way too hot when it's double wicked. But in my opinion, that's much better than doing one single wick where the flame's all crazy, and that can get too hot as well. And if you've already launched your business, leave a comment down below and let me know how long you tested for before you sold your first candle. But with that, I am going to end today's video right here. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave it a big thumbs up, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at MemoryBoxCandleCo, and I will see you in my next video. This is obviously a topic that can be very greatly, widely because there's a huge leap from actually making your own homemade candle.